You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Well, hello. Welcome to All in the Industry on Heritage Radio Network. I'm your host and producer, Shari Bayer, and it is Saturday, July 20th, 2024, and this is our 393rd episode of this series, which is dedicated to behind-the-scenes talent in the hospitality industry. Today, I have a special episode as a tribute to Naomi Pomeroy, a wonderful, award-winning chef and friend who tragically passed away last weekend on Saturday, July 13th, in a tubing accident in Oregon. She was 49 years old. I'm extremely sad about this news, and my heart goes out to Naomi's family and friends and everyone who knew her and loved her. Today's show is not something I was planning, and this interview coming up is not my traditional interview. It's a special conversation that I have with Naomi from June 2022 that I recorded in preparation for my Chef Wise book, which Naomi is a contributor to. And I feel fortunate that I have this recording and can share it with all of you today. But before I tell you more about it and about Naomi, first, as I do in every show, I will start out with my PR tip, and then we will have my conversation with Naomi, and I will close out the show with a special solo dining experience. As the founder of Bayer Public Relations, I'm going to tip the show off with my PR tip of the week. Today's tip is inspired by Naomi, and it is to say yes. Seize opportunities and embrace the hustle. Don't shy away from challenges or taking things on. Work hard, go for it, be in the moment, and believe in yourself and that you'll figure things out, even when the tasks seem daunting and beyond your or our capabilities. Being a yes person means leaning in, knowing that our efforts will pay off. So let's all be yes people, like Naomi was. It's a really great way to live. That's my tip today. So as I mentioned, today's show is a tribute to the late Naomi Pomeroy, an amazing chef who sadly passed away on July 13th, 2024, at the age of 49. According to an article on CNN by Shania Bauja, which came out on July 17th, Naomi drowned in the Willamette River in Corvallis, Oregon. An investigation by BCSO, which is the Benton County Sheriff's Office, determined 3 floaters on tubes and a paddleboard secured together were caught on an exposed snag in the water. One of the floaters, Naomi, was pulled under the water and held by the paddleboard leash. That is according to the sheriff's release statement. Naomi had been tubing along with her husband, Kyle Lyndon Webster, a fellow restaurateur, as well as a friend, who both were able to make it to the shore and survive this accident. This is a hard one for me. It's a hard one for everyone. It's extremely tragic. There was a lot of coverage on this as Naomi was a beloved chef and leader in our industry. Another piece in the New York Times by Kim Severson on July 18th described Naomi as a self-taught chef with an irreverent streak whose high standards and generosity of spirit made her the culinary matriarch of Portland, Oregon, a chef who made Portland a dining destination. Kim's piece noted many of Naomi's accolades, which included being selected as one of America's best new chefs by Food and Wine in 2009, and the Oprah magazine naming her as one of the 10 women on the rise. And in my Chef Wise book, Naomi's brief bio states, she is a Portland-based chef whose ventures have included Family Supper, Clark Lewis, Gotham Tavern, and Ripe Cooperative. Pomeroy's time as chef and owner of Portland's beloved gastronomic shrine Beast from 2007 to 2020 made her one of the region's most successful chefs and earned her the 2014 James Beard Award for Best Chef Pacific Northwest. That's a pretty short bio because the book has 117 chefs, but those are some highlights. Naomi also appeared on multiple cooking competition shows, including as a contestant on Top Chef Masters and Iron Chef, and as a judge on Top Chef Knife Fight and Bobby's Triple Threat. She published her first book in 2016 entitled Taste and Technique, Recipes to Elevate Your Home Cooking, and this was with Jamie Feldmar. In addition, during the pandemic, Naomi became very involved in the Independent Restaurant Coalition, known as the IRC, truly standing out as a leader in her industry. So when I was working on my Chef Wise book in 2021 and 2022, I reached out to Naomi to be a part of it as someone I knew in the industry who I highly respected as a chef and leader. And she said yes, and I was thrilled about that. And for her contribution to my book, we did a Zoom interview, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I was not planning to use this interview for my podcast. It was a way to collect information, but I decided to share it with you all today because I think it's special that I have this conversation with me and Naomi, which is about 45 minutes. My book came out in spring 2023, and this interview was on June 3rd, 2022. We talk about many of the topics in my book and the chapters that Naomi is a part of. She's in 5 chapters, which are leadership, business, team, work-life balance, and fundamentals. We dive into these different subjects and talk about her success and being a yes person and whether it's important to go to cooking school and about how we met and going to events and restaurants as businesses and working hard and the struggles of the industry and changes in the industry. And how she was an accidental restaurateur, as she says. And we talked a bit about the IRC and her involvement during the pandemic and getting validation of what she was going through by hearing others' experiences. And Naomi really shared from the heart. She was real. She was honest. She gave so much invaluable advice for anyone in the industry or just anyone in life. And if you want to get the book, you'll be able to read her responses and advice, which are taken from this conversation. I'm grateful that Naomi is a contributor to my book and that we formed a friendship and that I got to have her amazing food, and also that I have a copy of her book, Taste and Technique, which she gifted to me in 2016 when I was in Portland attending Feast, an amazing culinary festival that I got to go to 2 times, first in 2012 and then back in 2016. And that's when Naomi's book came out, and she signed a copy for me, which I have here. And it's such an impressive, beautiful book. I remember at the time thinking, I'm so excited to have this book, but wow, it's going to take a lot of room in my suitcase because it's big and heavy, but I'm grateful to have it. And Naomi wrote in the book, Shari, thank you for your years of support. Happy cooking, Naomi Pomeroy. So thank you, Naomi. I'm sorry we're not going to be able to sign each other's Chef-Wise books, but again, I'm so glad you're a part of it. My sincerest condolences to Naomi's family, friends, and team. I'm now going to share my conversation with Naomi, which is very special to me. There are a few very minor edits, but it's pretty much a raw conversation. I hope you enjoy hearing her voice and wisdom. Here's to being Chef-Wise.
It's been a long, couple years for sure.
Yeah.
What are you going to say? It's just been, I don't know anybody who it's just been like, everything's great. Like everything's been hard, it's wild.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't, I'm not a restaurateur, but I work with restaurants. So
Yeah,
in New York. So I know it's been very hard, I feel. And it's not, even though I think people want to think it's over, it's really not, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think so, especially if you had to do anything like new during the pandemic that people are still, like me, like changing my whole business model and people are still learning about it. So it's like kind of a little bit like starting over again, which, was my choice. It's not like I didn't, want to do that or I had to do that, but it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I feel like a little bit old to be starting again in a way. I don't know. I'm like right now I'm just extra tired because I have, a really tiny team and I have 2 people out with COVID. So, it's like I'm basically doing, we were already working lean. So now we have like half of our staff missing.
Wow.
So it's been a little bit like that, but it's okay. We're really doing okay. In the grand scheme of things, we feel, incredibly grateful. So, how are you?
I'm good. I mean, thank you. I'm busy, obviously, like everyone. I mean, I added this book project onto my plate.
Right.
But it's exciting. I'm really excited about it. I haven't done a book before, and this opportunity kind of came my way with ideas, working with Biden on a book, and so it's been a really exciting project to be working on because I've been talking to chefs around the world, and
so cool. And also you've been having to like herding cats, I would imagine. I mean, I know that I'm probably not the only one that said like, yeah, I'll help you, and then was like, oh my god.
Well,
chefs are hard.
I kind of knew going into this project, I was like, that was my concern, was that I have deadlines with the publisher, and it's not like me sitting down and writing copy, but a lot of it was, I'm reaching out to chefs to get responses, and I know how that is. So it hasn't been that bad, actually. It's just like right now, my last deadline with my publisher was actually the May 30th. Like that was like the deadline. And so I asked him if it was okay if I add on or things come in June. So I can submit. I would love for you to be a part of this. So I'm glad appreciate you making the time. And and I was also, it was like trying to just get in touch with people, and Instagram has been a really good tool. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, definitely. Cool. Well, I didn't have a chance to read the questionnaire or anything like that. So I feel like we should just kind of start like as if we're brand new, like we're just getting to know each other again. So whatever questions you have.
So, and really, I mean, it's wonderful to catch up with you and talk to you. And I know you were involved in IRC, and I was following along with that. And I follow you on Instagram and everything. So I kind of know a little bit, but this is a treat. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely.
And so the way the book is going to have different chapters, and it's also, how it's exactly going to look. I'm not sure, because every chef I'm getting different, we're talking about some of the same subjects, sometimes different. And it's kind of, leading it up to the chefs to what you want to talk about. But the chef, I have the questions that I had previously sent to you, and we could go through them. And if there's anything you just want to skip or you want to dive deep into, and we could talk about really anything you want to. It's a book on chef's advice. So.
Okay, that sounds good.
Cool. So the first thing I had was about how do you find the best ingredients and build relationships with great vendors and farmers? Just talking about sourcing, like, and ingredients.
Oh my gosh. How do you?
And also, if you want to back up and even talk about, Beast and like your change now with Ripe Cooperative and what you're doing there, and like how that process worked, or because I mean I'd been to Beast and I've seen what you're doing Ripe Cooperative, but it's very different. So
Yeah. Well, God, you know what, Sherry, to be totally honest, I'm like right in the middle of trying to figure out like what, what I want. I don't know. I'm like 48, and I'm just like very, like the pivots were pretty challenging for me in particular. And I'm sorry if it's getting loud because I'm setting up the whole space. So it's just going to take I have to keep focusing on working while I'm talking to you. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't know if I can talk about it like that yet, because I still sometimes feel like I don't know if I'll keep doing this or if I'll go back again, or you know what I mean? Like I feel like in general, I mean, this is a book, an advice book for like young chefs. Is that like just the idea? Is like people who are just like curious about chefdom?
both. I mean, I'm asking everyone, the one question I'm asking everyone is what advice do you have for aspiring cooks and chefs? So yeah. I think it's a book, I think, for, and the chefs I'm reaching out to are restaurateur type chefs more than, I mean, maybe I have a couple pastry and a couple more, let's say, food personality or catering, but it's mostly restaurant chefs.
Okay,
so like
got
how
it.
to run a restaurant type of idea.
Right, and so, oh God, I'm like almost, just to be honest, like I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know if I know right now.
I mean, your advice can be, it doesn't, I mean.
My advice is pretty simple. Like I think my advice is pretty simple. Like I thought about this a little bit before you, and I decided to talk, and I think like, to me, like these days, I feel like a lot of, and I'm sure other chefs have probably already talked to you about this, so you can always say like, take a different angle or something. But honestly, a lot of people are always asking me like, oh, how, because I'm self-taught and everything, like, how did you get so successful so quickly, or something like that, like without going to school, or, a lot of people have questions like that. And I think like for myself, the answer is always just like saying yes to things, like, like I think I like to talk a little bit about how when I started my career, I was, doing a catering company, and I had this woman who owned an art gallery in town. It's pretty well known, and she was always having these parties and events in her gallery space. And I think like in the very beginning of my career, I took whatever crossed my path and said yes to it. And I think like, I just remember this one conversation I had with these two younger cooks at an event I was at, and they said they had gotten asked to do some sort of food festival kind of thing, and they were laughing and saying like, we could never do that. There's only two of us. Like we need to stay and run the restaurant. Like we could never leave to go to a food festival. And I remember looking at them and just being like, wow, like, I hope that works out for you, because there's really something, the success, I think, for better or for worse, like success in being a chef in the 2020s, or even before, honestly, had a lot to do, with getting yourself out there. And I think there's this misconception sometimes. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Like a lot of times chefs have some, social challenges, right? Let's say like a lot of chefs can be much more, I think, internal and focused, like creatively. They really like are about their craft and about discipline and about the art of it and all of these different things. But when it comes down to it, I think that a lot of success, at least commercial success, which I would say in a capitalist culture comes down to, you have to keep at the end of the day, a restaurant is still has to be a business. It has to be successful financially or it won't stay around. And I've known some really, really talented chefs who, like incredibly talented, who just didn't feel comfortable maybe being in the spotlight or putting themselves out there, or thought that they could do it on merit alone, which like I wish that was true, but I don't think it is. I think like, in fact, both of the people I'm thinking about right now who I've really said, personally said to in the past, hey, you got to play the game a little bit, kind of thought like poo-pooed the game, said, oh, well, I'm just making really great food over here in my little corner. And I think like Shari, an example is like, how do you and I know each other, right? What is it from? Like, how did we meet? I don't remember. Food and wine.
I don't remember. Well, that's one thing even for me. I'm always like, people are like, so many, like, how do you know so many
I don't know.
people? And
No idea.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I think it's from one being in the game or doing this a while. Like I've been in it for a while, but I know you from food and wine events. I mean, I think so. I think it's from saying hi to you or trying your food at your table for like 4 or 5 times to the point where you remembered my face when I came up.
Yep. Yep. Yes, I do. And I think like, that's a thing, and I think like, like I said, for better or for worse, like I think I remember how inconvenient it was when I was talking to that chef years ago at a feast event, and he said, oh, it's just me and my chef partner, we're just 2 dudes like doing our thing. We could never go to a festival like that, and laughed it off. And I said, well, I don't know how, he said, I don't know how we could afford to go to the festival. And I said, I don't know how you could afford not to. Right. And so like, I looked back and I thought about when I got, Best New Chef in 2009, and they asked us to go to Aspen. And at the time it was just me and my sous chef, literally just the 2 of us. We had 1 dishwasher that was kind of a prep cook, and we had 2 servers. And that was our entire staff at that time in 2009. So, it was a tiny operation here, but they asked, and I was like, absolutely, yes, we're going to go. And we couldn't afford to close the restaurant down for the 5 days that we would be gone or whatever. We were a fledgling place. And so I remember we taught our dishwasher prep cook person the menu, and we hired a friend who was also in the cooking world to come. Actually, our dishwasher had a friend. We didn't even ever meet this guy, right? Like he was just like, I guess, in the cooking world. And we taught her all the dishes for that week and kept the menu the same. And we left for Colorado for 5 days, and it was like, that to a lot of people sounds really, really crazy. But at the same time, in the spirit of, saying yes to the adventure and really going for it, I think that was like invaluable choice career-wise, right? Like met everyone, New York people, everybody. Like first person that we saw was David Chang, hung out with Jose Andres. Like, there were so many important, and long-term connections. Because if you trace that back, like 2009, when we met Jose at Aspen, and then he was like a judge for us on Iron Chef, and he recognized us from Aspen and being at his house. And then it was like, it was the domino effect of that one choice. And I think like choosing things that aren't always convenient and really, just kind of going for it, I think. And I know that sounds so basic, but I think like I meet time and time again, I just meet people who think that this stuff is going to come, like that the recognition is going to come out of thin air or something, and I just think it comes from hard work and from saying yes to things. And going back to my early catering days, it was the same thing. I mean, establishing a catering company, I remember this woman, this gallery owner, having these first Thursday events. And I was living in a studio apartment at the time, like didn't even have a commercial kitchen space. She had a $200 budget to do these first Thursday art opening parties that were for, food for 50. And, I remember spending $250. So, I mean, I'm like putting in my own money to the event and working 16 hours to do it for free or whatever. And that's how I built my reputation. And I think like in 2022, it's hard for me to picture a young person hustling to that degree and not saying, I deserve this, I deserve more. I heard the going rate for this is X, Y, or Z. And it's like, I think sometimes you have to be willing to see the opportunity past the momentary circumstance of it. Because I paid to do those events, but I was a brand new company and nobody knew me yet. And I was, I didn't have investors or anything like that. I was just a 22-year-old kid. And so I think like a lot of my ethos around all of this has been, to just say yes to things and go for it. So, I mean, that's a big part of it, I think, of the hustle.
And that's awesome. And I totally relate myself to just what you're saying. And it's great. It's really great advice. And I'm not just saying that. I think it's very true. And sometimes, and it's not basic. I don't think it's basic, I think, to you because at this point, because it's what you do. And maybe telling people this for a long time, but no, it is really great advice. And I think, I have a specific memory. Like I definitely remember seeing you at the James Beard Awards, like in the gala area. I think I was there before. I went in before like the ceremony had officially ended and was walking around with someone. I don't know. It was very dark. I just remember like the times I've seen you. I remember like getting your book at Portland Feast from you. You gave me a book. Yeah. I mean, like it was like, like I have very special memories. So
thanks.
Yeah. And the hustle works. I mean, look, it does. So
it really does. It's undeniable. And, I think, people just, I guess I just feel like I've had like people come through, dishwashers and prep cooks and things like that. And just looking at me like, oh, wow. Like, how did this happen for you? Like, it was like I got struck by lightning or some cool, like, miracle happened. And it's like, no, man, I just hustled. Like, I just worked to the bone, like so hard. And that's the thing about being a chef, right? It's like, there's not, and I know that people know that, but I mean, but here's the thing, like the other piece of advice, right? In 2022, because I'll say like, I look back over the career and I'll say like my career was ramping up for, a good 10 years before I got the Best New Chef. But, and then post Best New Chef, every time I got, and I'm sure you got this, I'm sure other chefs have said this, but every time I got like some sort of recognition, I wasn't like, whoo, and like with the arms up and laying back on my chaise lounge. It was like, oh shit, like, time to really turn it up. Like people, now that I got Best New Chef, people coming into the restaurant expecting to have like the greatest meal they've ever had in their life. And so wowing people becomes much harder. Right. It's and it's not their fault because they've heard so many superlatives from their friends about best meal I ever had or whatever the sort of thing that people say. And then your job as a chef is to lean into that and say, oh my God, now we have to really turn it up, And so I think that like at every one of those little marks and junctures, it was like, oh my God, a wake up call for, being in action and making sure that people had a meal that lived up to whatever their hyped up expectations are. So I do think that that's another really important part of it is not resting. But then on the flip side, I don't think I would necessarily even do it the same. If I went back, I feel like, and I'll say this new thing and why it's so hard right now is because I'm trying so hard to schedule people for my salaried people for a maximum of 50 hours a week. And I'm trying so hard to pay everyone like over $20 an hour to start. And then they get their really generous tips and healthcare. And I'll be honest, like we're in a small space and the math is still really hard. Like it's really hard just to even get it to like, I would say like, how do I put this succinctly? Like there's a great experiment going on right now. Like, can our industry survive in a healthy way? Because I could look back and tell you that the way that I got successful was to hustle and say yes to everything. But I could also look back and tell you how many of my daughter's school events I missed, like how much time I didn't take for myself, like how hard it was on my body and how I used to make up all of the stress and kind of in this like forced relaxation of just like drinking and partying. And, over the last few years, it's taken this like huge shift, right? Where it's like, I don't even drink anymore. I mean, that's so common for chefs. Like I'm all about my yoga and like my quality of life outside of work. And I think like in the past, we always decompressed by commiserating and drinking heavily. And I think now, that decompression, as an older person, like I want it to change. I want it to feel differently. I want to wake up on my weekends and feel great. I want to spend like really quality time with my family. And I want to, more importantly, see that for my staff. And I would say I'm struggling, Shari, to get my staff to, I have one of my chefs is her father also was a caterer her whole life and she worked for him and things like that. So she's almost like a parallel of my daughter, right? So she was raised by a person who is not there, who was hustling all the time. And the only time she got to spend time with him was by working with him. And so I'm trying to train her to take care of herself. And, I have another cook. It's the same thing. It's like, he's only kind of happy when he's at work and he just wants to work all the time. And I'm saying, Matt, you need to forge, a relationship with, hobbies and other interests and get yourself to just some kind of balance. Because I don't think it's sustainable. But I mean, then the question is, I don't know if it's actually sustainable to give everyone healthcare and have everyone working 40 hours and have everybody have this work-life balance outside of the home or the work environment if we're only able to charge, X amount for a pasta dish and we're buying the best ingredients. And it's just like the math is still TBD.
Yeah. Well,
because somewhere someone's getting it. Almost every time you talk to a successful restaurateur, somewhere someone's getting exploited. I don't even care. It's just like, I'm seriously from, buying less quality ingredients or filling your entire kitchen with unpaid labor or, whatever you want to call it, but I'm doing this experiment right now to try to figure out whether you can have a really small restaurant that is not open every single day of the week, that has a really talented, like high level staff that's executing at the top level and that has work-life balance. And I mean, call me in a year. I don't know if it's going to work or not.
Well, you answered, I have one of the questions I had, and it was on my sheet to you too, was about how important is work-life balance and how has the industry changed over the years. And I could totally relate to everything you're saying because back in the day, I worked in restaurants and was a big drinker, and I quit drinking a while ago, and I'm very into my yoga now. So everything you're saying, I'm like, yes. And yes. They're, but yeah, this shift or that, I mean, you just kind of explained it with what's happening but you're, like trying to figure out the math on it. As you said, it's just to be determined. It's tough.
It's really hard. And I'm like, well, maybe if I was in a bigger city or a different location or a bigger space or any of these things, like what would make it easier? But the truth is that our industry is, if you're a chef owner, our industry is, the margins, they're insane. They're just crazy.
Yeah.
And we're not necessarily charging, people what they need to pay to make the whole system work. And so we're still working on it. At least here in Portland. I mean, I know like sometimes I get jealous of my big city friends who have a bunch of restaurants and,
But I mean, from what I know in New York City, well, it's not easy here. None of this is easy with rent and being, and also I right now, I mean, I know there's still a shortage of people just can't find staff. I mean, that's still going on.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. But you know what? We're getting through it. What other kinds of stuff? I mean, I probably.
No, that was well, one thing I just, as you kind of mentioned on career path and stuff, just as one of the questions I had, just on a basic, like, do you think chefs should go to cooking school or culinary school in this stage of the world or now? Are you there?
Hey, sorry. I got cut off a little bit.
That's okay. I was like, oh, I guess she didn't like my question.
No, I like your question. But yeah, so
I was asking about cooking school, if you thought chefs should go to cooking school.
Loaded question. Every once in a while, I wish I went to cooking school. Every once in a while, not often.
Yeah.
But I mean, I always say like, no, you don't need to go. But then it's like, I know that I've probably hired a few people that have been to culinary school. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they learned some good stuff there. But I don't think it's anything that you can't learn at all. It's just working. And then it's like really expensive too. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess my lean would say no, but I don't hire people because they did or didn't go to culinary school. Like I hire people based on where they've worked before. I don't know. Or just like their personality. Yeah.
I had like, what's something you wish you knew before you opened your own restaurant? Kind of answered that a bit.
Well, I mean, I think like, I never even meant to open a restaurant. It's kind of like an accident, right? Like I always said, I'd never open a restaurant. I was catering and it was really like an accident that we opened. We had a really talented cook that got an offer to go open a restaurant somewhere else. And then we didn't want him to leave Portland. And so my ex-husband asked him if we opened a restaurant for him, would he stay here instead of moving back to the Bay Area? So our first restaurant was an accident. And I wasn't that involved in it. And I didn't really like the chef. As a personality wise, he was incredibly talented, but he was difficult to work with. And so I'm like an accidental restaurateur sort of. And I think, I just think it's a little bit hard sometimes to think about. You're saying for people who want to open their own restaurant, like own it, right? Like not just like be a chef of somebody else's restaurant.
Yeah, a tip if for somebody who wants to be a chef owner, like maybe something you didn't know before you opened your own restaurant that you wish someone had told you. Oh, it's going to be freaking hard.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. I think probably just more in the vein of like how it never turns off, like every time something falls short, whether it's like, money in a bank account or, somebody needing time off or like whatever it is, it's like but it's just always you. Right. And so I think people don't realize, or you might not think about, just because you're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays doesn't mean that you don't spend Mondays and Tuesdays like thinking about work, talking about work, planning about work, whatever, or figuring out whatever your next like strategy and moves are, or getting back to someone you didn't get back to during your work week. I mean, it's just kind of like, it doesn't turn off, and I think like, that's an important thing to know. I think you can hear that and then say in theory that that's cool, but like, you have to be, I think, okay with like living and breathing. And like, I mean, I guess I just didn't realize, like, for us, at least here in Portland, it's a really seasonal. And I was actually starting the IRC it back a couple years ago with, being on that initial call with all those guys. I did this one interview with Tom Colicchio. I think we were both talking to the Washington Post or something, like some big mag paper. And I have to say that it was such a relief to hear that I wasn't alone in the fact that, I made money 4 months of the year, broke even 4 months of the year, and lost money 4 months of the year. Like it was really vindicating. It made me feel so validated to like hear that a big, like, I mean, whatever, like I guess I have a name too, but like just a big name like that, who's like known as a successful restaurateur or whatever, was saying something to me that I thought maybe kind of only applied to me. I would say, like, just, I think knowing that there's a lot of posturing and positioning that people do out there to like make it seem like everything's cool all the time. Like a big part of what chefs do, right, is just like, and I mean, this is part of being in the cooking world, is like, you're all, no matter how badly you're going down in flames, you're just like, just keep going, right? You get the dish up, you smile, you turn around, you do the next thing, and you just keep going. And I think there's not enough kind of honesty or commiserating, I think, that happened. So like when the pandemic hit and we were able to all talk freely about how tight the margins were, how we were barely making it, how we were exhausted, how, whatever, to me, it seems like important to have a certain degree of that also. Because there's a lot of putting on a brave face that goes on, but like, yeah, as a chef owner, like you're consistently thinking, I mean, what's going on, right? You know how much money's in the bank or not, and you know how many reservations you have on the books for the weekend, and then there's just like sometimes there's like a vacuum where you feel like alone, or you just have to be like to your whole staff, like, okay, everything's going to be cool. But you also have to tell yourself that, like you're calming yourself down, like, okay, we are going to make it. Everything's going to be fine. So it's just, I think that's the grind of it. It's so much more than just like putting up good food and hustling and working hard. It's like, there's this whole other thing that happens when you're a chef owner that is like moving all the pieces around, like a chess game with yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And, it's a good story and it's good advice. It really is, knowing you're not alone out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, well, it was so validating to hear, oh, other people feel this way too. Like, right. Oh, people with successful businesses, like, oh, other people like actually lose money for like a whole quarter of every year. Yeah. I always felt like such a weirdo for that, like I didn't know that was like okay or normal,
Yeah, no, I've heard from stories I've heard with the IRC I think that was a silver lining that came out of the pandemic, that you guys all bonded, like learned from each other.
Big time.
Yeah, I mean, this has been wonderful. I guess there was one thing because you talked a bit, I guess there's one question I had about like, how can chef owners balance the business side of things with creativity in the kitchen? Like that was like the last thing I was thinking of, like, since it is your business and then you are the creator of, like, how do you do that?
Well, the most important thing I think is like realizing, I mean, like my best advice for anyone, chef or not, like just any business owner, is like, get to know and really be honest about your strengths and weaknesses. Like, I think one of the biggest, most toxic things that I'm ready to like have leave the kitchen space forever is this idea that like everybody has to know everything or pretend like they know everything. Like, it's like, no one does that. Like we, I ran a restaurant for 15 years called Beast. And so, we didn't really feel like we could put like tons of fish on the menu. So, I'm, if now I run a different thing. Right. And maybe we want to have like more fish, and it's like not my strong suit, like, because I didn't come up with butchering like tons of fish and things like that. And it's just like, I'm not going to stand in front of my staff and try to pretend like something, like I know something I don't know. I mean, I think ultimately it's about building a team of people that you trust, who share the vision and who have different talents than you. And you don't have to have every talent. You really don't. Like, and I think like that's one of the things that I feel like one of my biggest strengths is that I try to be humble, and I try to be honest about, what I know and what I don't know. And I don't try to pretend like I know a lot of stuff that I don't know. And I think that that's like being comfortable with that. I mean, comes a little bit with time and with age, but when you can balance it, because if you build a team of people who are good at some of the things that you're not good at, that's how success happens. Success doesn't happen by yourself. It really doesn't. Like really can't. It's too much for one person to do.
Yeah. Well, I do have a chapter talking about team. Like,
well, there's nothing more important than that. Like, I mean, building a team of people who you trust, who trust you, and being able to be open about, things that are happening with the business. And I mean, like, I open up to my whole team. Everybody knows, oh, it's a struggle right now. It's like, here's where we're at with things. This is where, we're open books here, and I think it's really important, especially as an owner, to pass that information along to your crew, because they know, they can feel it when things are tough, but if they're not getting talked to, then they're just sort of in the dark, and they can't contribute or help you come up with ideas about how to solve these problems, or, whatever else. So I think like people who, I think stoicism has to die. You know what I mean? Like, we can't do this by ourselves. We have to be honest and share. We have to create teams of people who can be a support and who can handle it.
Yeah.
When times get tough, you need to know that they're going to be there for you, and they're only going to be there for you if you're there for them.
Yeah. Well, how do you celebrate your team? Like, is there?
Oh my God, so much. So much.
Yeah.
I mean, so much. Just like whatever. We do things like for, just anything from, I mean, to be honest, more than anything, it's just, we don't do the same level of like, crazy partying or drinking or hanging out like we used to do in the, early 2000s, and just like being in the party zone. Like, that's not what we do anymore. But, like birthdays, we celebrate, lunch we make for each other. I don't know. I think like, just to be honest though, like more than anything, like just listening, just being like, oh my God, you're tired. How do we get you an extra half day off this week? Or, you know what I mean? Just like I think being aware more about where people are at, things that are going on. I mean, it's like, I have more boundaries than I had years ago, right? Where I'm not like, everyone on my team knows every single thing about me and my whole life or something, or I know everything about, but I think like trying to at least be attentive to the fact that people have lives outside of work, that's huge. That's not something we used to do. We used to try to shame people for having lives outside of work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, back in the day, I worked at Charlie Trotter's back in like 1997. So I have restaurant experience and just the culture of things and just everything. Like, things are different now, but yeah, it's different. Yeah, you're allowed to have a life.
Yeah, you're
outside of work,
Yeah, not just allowed. Like, for one of my cooks, I have to like maybe force them to have a life outside of work, right? It's almost like it's my other job is to like make sure that people are taking care of their mental health also. And that also comes from top down, right? If I'm not taking care of myself, no one else is going to take care of themselves either. And then the culture continues and it goes on and on ad nauseum, like people just expecting that if, I see something like someone working too hard or not taking any time for themselves, then that's what they expect me to do. So I have to try to like, even in the times when I feel like, oh, I need to be there, or I want to be there, it's just like, sometimes I have to like resist it too, for the betterment of the group.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking if I lived in Portland, I'd come work for you. I mean, what a great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No, I try to make it really great. And I've said recently, like, and I'm very serious about this, is like the success of this place isn't just the success of it, like if it like makes a profit or like, stays open or, serves great food, or like the success is also like, how are the people on the team doing, right? Because if we can be successful, but it means that everybody has to work 65 hours and, whatever limited time off or whatever the fuck it means, then that's still, to me, like, I mean, to be honest, just so you know, like, if we can't get there, like, I won't keep it open. I won't keep it open just because it can break even or make money. I had to keep it open because it's doing all those things and the people are being taken care of.
Right.
So that's the part that's like TBD, right? Because sure, can we make it work by, the olden days, Beast worked because it was me and Micah and we worked 90 hours a week or whatever the fuck we were doing. I'm not doing that again. I mean, one is that I'm not 30 anymore, right? Like now I'm 48, so that's a whole different life. But also, like, just fuck that. Like, we don't, that bred exactly all the problems that we've seen in this business industry, right? People have, ending marriages, like committing, outrageous acts of grossness, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there's just so much of it, and that was our own fault. It's not like you can't look outside and be like blaming that on somebody else, right? That was like a culture that we made.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be a part of it anymore. So
yeah,
working on it.
Well, you're awesome. You really are.
Thanks.
And I really appreciate your time. And I'm so excited to have you a part of this book.
I'm so glad too. I was going to feel so bad if I wasn't able to do it. So I'm glad I thought of just like, yeah, here I am, just like cutting parchment for my, focaccia. And I'm in here setting up the dish pit and like whatever, opening the restaurant. And now I have a team here that's just like listening to me to have this interview with you. So it's cool.
Yeah, no, multitasking. It's fantastic. And yeah, I mean, most of the responses I've done with written responses, but I've done a handful of interviews and now transcribed them.
I know, sorry.
No, I want the content and I'm thrilled to have you part of the book. And so I think
thank you.
Posted. It's supposed to come out next spring. So
okay, that sounds cool. And you said it's a Biden.
It's Biden, and cool. I mean, as I said, like I'm amazed, like the people that are part of this. Like, and Tom is in the book. I did an interview with him actually on a Zoom. He was my first one.
You did. He's so awesome. What a great guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Listen, if you need anything else or you want to run over anything, or you're like, is this a good summary quote for whatever X, Y, or Z? Just let me know if you need me to approve or any, let me know how I can help further.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. What's the best way to follow up with you?
Text message.
Okay.
Anytime.
Okay, great. So
yeah, anytime.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I do know that texting chefs is usually the best way to get them.
It is. I'm like the worst. Feel like I'm the worst emailer. I mean, maybe voicemail is like one step even worse than email. Like I just don't even ever listen to my voicemail. So yeah, just text me.
Okay. Cause I know, I mean, Instagram is like, I know we're on it, but
yeah, I don't always check those messages. So I'm glad that you were able to reach out to me. All right, Shari, Thank you. It's nice to chat with you again after all these years.
Yeah, I hope to see you soon, and good luck with everything.
Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
Take care. Bye.
Good luck. Bye.
Thanks. Welcome back to All in the Industry on Heritage Radio Network. I'm your host and producer, Shari Bayer, and this is my special tribute show to the late Naomi Pomeroy, who sadly passed away on Saturday, July 13th in a tubing accident in Oregon. She was an amazing chef and restaurateur and leader in our industry. I'm so grateful that she's a part of my Chef Wise book and that I was able to share this interview with you all today. Listening back myself, I'm pretty much in awe of Naomi and what she shared with me and with us. Thank you, Naomi. You will be greatly missed. So I'm going to share my solo dining experience now as a flashback to my experience at Beast in 2016, as it seems fitting. So here's the rundown. The location, 5425 Northeast 30th Avenue, Portland, Oregon. And this location turned into Ripe Cooperative. And the chef and owner was Naomi Pomeroy. And when she opened Beast, it was with her ex-partner, Michael Hebb, and it was born from a pop-up of family suppers. And the concept was a communal table restaurant. It had an original supper club vibe, offering a multi-course menu. I believe it was 6 courses. And she was known for not having any substitutions. So 2 practices that weren't as common back when she opened in 2007. So why'd I go? Well, this is when I was in Portland in 2016 to go to Feast again. And I was a fan of Naomi's, having met her over the years, and I really wanted to check out her restaurant. So I made a reservation. And my experience, I arrived and I was seated at one of the communal tables, and I loved the dining room and I loved the vibe and the meal. It was a set menu, and I did post online that it was capped off with a foie gras bonbon. And I have a nice little picture of that. And it was delicious. And I wrote, lovely tasting menu, space, and hospitality. And Naomi was known for signature dishes like labor-intensive charcuterie plate and oxtail galettes and pork crackling topped corn soup. So my take, as I said, lovely tasting menu. I recall really enjoying it and also sharing the experience with fellow diners, one of whom I'm still connected with on social media, a woman named Amelia, who was dining with her mom, and she worked in the industry and lived in the Napa area and did restaurant and hotel design, and we've stayed in touch. So new friendships can come when you go to great communal table dinners. The ambiance, it was an intimate dining room. It had windows up front, 2 communal tables, 24 seats, and it had an open kitchen. And it was like homey, but modern and dark and sexy and candlelit, and just a place you kind of wanted to hang out all night. Perfect for feasting. Interesting tidbit. So Beast had opened in 2007 and had a great run up until 2020 when it closed during COVID. Naomi then turned it into a market called Ripe Cooperative, which was a restaurant, wine shop, and grab-and-go market, and that closed in 2022. And another interesting tidbit, in 2008, the Oregonian named Beast Restaurant of the Year, along with Le Pigeon, another restaurant in Portland, which I had gone to and was great. Personal fun fact. So this was my second time in Portland and attending Feast. And I did a show with its co-founders, Carrie Welsh and Mike Thielen. If you want to go back and listen, it's episode 116. And Feast was a really fantastic festival that they put together. Maybe they'll bring it back one day. So the cost of my meal, well, I don't have the receipt, but I believe it was over $100. And would I go back? Yes. If it was still around, of course, I would. So there isn't a website or Instagram, but if you want to visit Naomi's Instagram, it was at Naomi Pomeroy. That's NaomiPomeroy. And that's my solo dining experience and the show. Thank you, Naomi, for your friendship, for your wonderful cooking, for your leadership in our industry, and again, for your contributions to my book, Chef Wise, Life Lessons from Leading Chefs Around the World by Fiden. I will cherish knowing you and having you a part of my book forever. And again, my sincerest condolences to Naomi's friends and family and everyone who loved her. Rest in peace. Anyone who's interested in Chef Wise, it is available wherever books are sold. And you can follow me, as always, at Shari Bayer, at Bayer PR, and at All Industry. My Facebook page is All in the Industry. My websites are BayerPublicRelations.com, ShariBayer.com, and AllInTheIndustry.com. All of our shows are archived at heritageradionetwork.org. We are also on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks to my engineer today, Armin. I'm your host and producer, Shari Bayer. I will be back soon with a new show. Till then, stay safe and stay well. And thank you as always for being part of All in the Industry. Bye. All in the Industry is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.